Right. Hello, everyone. That should be us live on Facebook. Hope everyone's well this morning. This
This
evening.
morning.
It is morning, I think, for some people in the world. So this is a slightly different format to usually. So my Friday night lives have always been just me, some questions and a complete monologue. So for the first time, I've got a guest on. So welcome Simon Chapple to the group.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I don't think, to be honest, you need much introduction, because I think, having put the post there, everyone seems to have known about you. But for those of you who don't know Simon, well, you could probably tell your own story, but obviously sober coach, trained with Annie Gray, now author, and coincidentally, this turned up today.
Oh, snap.
So we can hear all about that. So do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself, Simon? And also, well, I've not read this. It's not even released yet, is it? Is it December?
No, it comes out on Christmas Eve.
Oh, right. So you can tell us what's in here, because I know you've written the Sober Survival Guide,
Yeah.
which I have read. So you can let us know what's in this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great to be here. And obviously, we connected over the sober sessions and got to know each other there. And it's just great to sort of be able to perhaps get to know some of the people in your community and find out, hear their questions and find out what's coming up for them. But I mean, a little bit about me, the short version. I was a heavy daily wine drinker for well over 20 years. I was drinking anything from 2 to 3 bottles most days, often with beer, sometimes with spirits on top. And over the years, the anxiety started to creep up. I was experiencing low moods, and it was affecting pretty much all areas of my life. It was impacting relationships, my parenting skills. My son didn't know whether he was dealing with Jekyll or Hyde, what version of me he was going to get. It was affecting my career. I run my own business, and yeah, I was turning up at work, but I wasn't fully engaged, motivated, present, that sort of thing. And I'd gone on like that for a long time. And it was probably about 5 years before I quit that the seed of cognitive dissonance got planted, where there were a couple of things that happened. I had shaking hands at my computer one morning while I was trying to work, and they wouldn't stop shaking. And I'd seen an article on the news where they were talking about the dangers of drinking. And I normally would avoid those things, because when you're a heavy drinker, you don't want to hear that stuff. You don't want to hear the truth. You want to hear the stuff that says alcohol reduces the risk of heart disease. Alcohol will stop you getting cancer. But I listened, and that kind of planted this seed in my mind where I started questioning my relationship with alcohol. And once that seed's planted, there's no getting away from it. Everything's changed. You can't go back to ignorant bliss ever again. And that was where I had been. And I spent about 5 years going from feeling like I needed to quit through, and then going back to drinking to stop the thoughts of feeling like I want to quit drinking. And I just was like a pendulum swinging from one to the other. And then eventually it was getting into the work of Annie Grace, reading your book, and connecting with some of the other people who share about sobriety online, that I actually started to get excited about what an alcohol-free life might look like. And it really felt like a good fit. I felt like Cinderella putting the slipper on when I started to realize what that life looked like. I don't know if it'd suit me, but and I really did come at it from a perspective of excitement and getting motivated and really wanting what was on the other side of alcohol. And that helped me so much, that attitude of this. I didn't view it as alcoholic or having some kind of disease. And I don't really prescribe to a lot of the Alcoholics Anonymous stuff. I saw it as a lifestyle that I wanted for myself. And I felt empowered in making that choice. And yeah, really, it went from there. I started a YouTube channel and a website and a blog. Annie Grace came on and did a video with me. And when we spoke, she said, "Oh, you'd be a brilliant coach. Come over to America." And then I stayed with Annie for just over a week and spent some time with people who work for her in the US, trained up as a coach. And then I started using stuff from my blog to put a book together and release the Sober Survival Guide. and it's just kind of snowballed from there. And it's been an amazing journey, and I've learned so much about myself on it and connected with so many people, just like you have as well. It's just been
Yeah.
incredible.
You do. It's kind of opened up a different world. The thing I find very interesting is you and I almost drank at polar opposites, because I used to binge drink, but it got so at weekends where I'd drink loads, I'd fall asleep, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and drink more, and fall back to sleep and drink in the morning, and then start ringing in sick. But there were always periods when I would stop in between. But you were almost a complete opposite. You were drinking heavily, not necessarily first thing in the morning, but constantly for, what was it, 20 odd years or something?
Yeah, every day. And
Yeah.
I was very disciplined. I would never start drinking before 7:30 p.m. And it was almost laughable. There were times when, for example, we went to the horse races at Ascot, and my friends were all drinking, but I didn't want to drink too much during the day because I wanted my bottles of wine that night. And I was looking forward to my wine and not drinking too much because I didn't want to be completely smashed. I fooled myself into thinking I was in control of it.
Yeah. Did you do that thing a lot of people seem to do, and I used to do it? I was talking to someone about it the other day, where as you know, I still work in the city, and where I was working previously, we do a lot of work with lawyers, and they take us out boozing quite a lot. So we go to these really nice places. And my wife at the time didn't like being in the house on her own. So when I was going out for the evening, I'd say, look, it's work related, I've got to go. So she'd take the kids and stay with her mum. And I'd go out for like these really plush places in central London, have a couple of drinks and just think, I don't want to be here. I want to be sat at home and the house is empty.
Yeah.
And I'd just go home on my own and pick up a load of wine on the way and just sit there. Because I think there's something about when you know you're going to drink too much, you're better off on your own, aren't you? You don't really want to be around other people when you're doing it.
And when my wife would go away on holiday with her friends or whatever, that was exactly that. I would look forward to just sitting there, putting mind-numbing TV on and just getting for a wine box.
Yeah, just sitting there drinking. So tell us about the new book. So it's called How to Quit Alcohol in 50 Days. So is it like a almost 50-day guide? Tell us about
kind of. So it's there's 50 chapters as well. You obviously did a foreword for it and wrote a few words around how we know each other at the start, and then there's an introduction and a bit about how to use the book. But essentially it's 50 chapters structured in a sort of path that kind of holds the reader's hand as they move their way through it. And then at the end of each chapter, there's a section to write down reflections or give answers to questions that get asked in the chapters. Some of them are relatively short. Some of the chapters are longer. I actually, it was a really nice break during the lockdown. Actually, I went to London a few weeks ago to record the audio book, and it was quite interesting, the difference in the length of the chapters. And then I started thinking, if you listen to the audio, but some people had said to me, I can't wait to listen to this while I'm running. And I thought, no, there's a downloadable workbook. You can't go running. You need the downloadable workbook.
Yeah, because that's the way they're going these days. I think the self-help books, they're containing more and more. It's less just sitting and reading a book and more getting you to actually interact with it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I was very mindful because a lot of people have said to me that the Sober Survival Guide is really easy to read. There's no jargon. It's kind of simple yet powerful. Bit simple, Simon. And I tried to keep this in the same theme where it wasn't overly complicated, but it really pulled up the things that people need to kind of look in the mirror at and learn about themselves to have some powerful breakthroughs. And I'm confident I hit the right note. I really put a lot of time and work into it. And also it was another year on from the Sober Survival Guide, and I felt like there was a year's more knowledge of all the coaching and all the questions I'd been asked and answered.
Yeah, funny enough, I felt that with Alcohol Explained too, because it was almost, a lot of people say to me, what's the difference between the books? And I always find it a bit hard to articulate it, because it's almost just stuff I picked up in the 4 or 5 years since the first book was published. So it's a bit hard to say the second book is this and the first book is this. It's more of the same. but kind
Yeah,
of just,
I think mine's quite different in that regard, because the Sober Survival Guide, which is behind me there, um, that one was kind of memoir. The first half of it's more memoir, and then it's all the things that you need to know in the months and the years after you quit drinking. And there's specific chapters for all those different eventualities. Whereas this one takes you from literally whether you're at day one or you've been having, multiple day ones over and over. It takes you from there right through. But it doesn't actually ask people to commit to putting the glass down until they get to chapter 25. But then in chapter 25 it says, do not read beyond this point until you're ready, until you're up for it and you're ready to take a break from drinking. And then the idea is you take 25 days for the back half of the book, and you start on that bit.
it's like a chapter a day for those next 25 then.
So the first 25 days leads you up to it, but it's, if you've already quit, or it works, it still has the impact. But that second part is kind of right now, don't go beyond here until you're ready to say I'm taking a break, and then you read the second set of 25 chapters.
Yeah. That's I always think lots of chapters in a book bodes well, because I find it really difficult when you've got like 40-page chapters, especially with self-help books. I kind of like short, bite-sized chapters rather than massive, long, heavy, verbose chapters.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I like to get through a chapter, especially with a self-help book. I like to get through a chapter in one sitting.
Yeah. Anyway, look, we've got some questions. Apologies in advance for everyone, because I don't think we're going to get through all the. I mean, to be honest, I generally struggle to get through all of them anyway. And an hour just talking on my own, so I don't think we're going to get through all of them. But I think the first one you've kind of covered off, but I think it would be useful to hear in a bit more detail, was when did you know you needed to stop? Did it take a few times?
Yeah, so I suppose, the first part I kind of was around that 5 years. And
So was it, sorry, it was like 5 years from when you thought something's wrong here, I need to think about it, to actually quitting.
And that's why that's one of the things that I has been important to me in sharing this message. Like, you don't need to stay stuck for as long as I did. You don't need to live with that horrible conflict in your mind of half of it wanting to quit, half of it wanting to continue drinking. You can end the war fast. I was stuck there for that long, but I had a lot of day ones going round and round in circles, and I just couldn't get past more than one day. I got to 2 days once, and I thought it was incredible, such an amazing achievement. And then went out for a run with my wife and started talking to her about how I wasn't going to be drinking that evening, and broke down in tears. And she's hugging me in the middle of the street while I'm crying like a baby. And it shows you the level of power that substance had over me. And but I didn't have any stints of 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever, and then go back. It was 1 or 2 days, probably 30 times over, and I just couldn't get beyond that. And then it just all clicked into place as I started diving into like online learning tools and books and things like that. And I thought, I'm not alone in this. There's other people. I'm in Facebook groups. I want to prove it to myself. And I just jumped off the edge of that cliff with both feet into the unknown. And thankfully the water below was warm and welcoming.
Yeah, just simple as that. So, I mean, did you like build up? Because this is a question we get a lot in the group, is like people are doing constant day ones. And one of the questions is, should I just stop now, or should I say, right, I'm setting a date? I mean, how did you do it? Did you obviously you're immersing yourself in all the quit lit, you're starting to change your view of things, you're starting to think, you know what, actually I can do this and I'm going to really enjoy it. Was it just then, or did you put a date in the diary?
So I didn't put a date in the diary, but I'd realised I wanted to quit. So I had that mindset of, I want this. I think you've got to be hungry for it. You've got to know what you're going to gain, and realise that you're not really losing a great deal. Although at the start you think you're losing something special. It's like ending a relationship. But what I did do in the 10 days or so before I quit for good. I don't always recommend this to people unless they're struggling, but I'll share it anyway because I guess it was part of my journey. I actually started watering down my wine. So I would get a bottle of red wine and I'd begun pouring away to start with 20 or so percent and putting water in it. And it didn't really taste any different. So I did that for a few days and then I upped it to, I can't remember what it was, maybe 40%. Okay. And I kept doing that. And after about 10 days or so, of course, I wanted the full-bodied hard stuff again. And I had a few days of that. And it was after that I stopped. I just didn't want it anymore. It was almost like I just felt sickened by it and disgusted by it. And my mindset had changed. So I don't know whether there's something in that. If anyone's been struggling just to have a day one and just stop and get on with it, maybe just doing that and then seeing how you feel as you water it down.
Yeah.
Sort of like weaning off it a bit, I guess.
So do you remember, how long ago was it you quit? It's a few years ago now?
Yeah, it's about 2.5 years ago.
So do you remember, did you have like any, because obviously 3 bottles of wine a night is a fairly substantial amount. It's almost, I think, akin to a bottle of spirits every night that you were drinking for decades. Did you have any like insomnia, tiredness? What was the...
Yeah, I had quite a bit of that. The worst thing was definitely the sleep. I had 3 or 4 nights where I just didn't sleep. It was like someone had given me amphetamines and I was up all night. And when I did it, I think it was the 4th day that I started to actually get some sleep. And then I was waking up in the night, the bed sheets were wringing wet where I'd been sweating. They were cold and I'd get out of bed and back in and it was damp. It was horrible. So there were a few nights like that. And I think it can be really easy at that stage to think, well, alcohol will solve this. Alcohol, it cools you. It's an illusion. And it will say to you, well, just drink me and everything will be all right. It'll all be fine. No, it won't. It will keep you stuck. But I knew that. I knew I had to dig my heels in at times to not believe the lies that it was saying to me. But so there was mood, sort of unstable emotions and things like that. They were up and down. And again, that's another thing that can trip us up. But as you say, after a week or so, 60 to 70% more kind of resilient mentally and started to feel good about myself. And that was when I really was seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. It was, to be honest, day 4 or 5, I think are the worst in the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's the worst of it, is those first few days when you don't sleep, isn't it? Where you literally just lying awake all night and just physically can't sleep.
Yeah.
That's one of the things where I always found it was, hangovers very like being ill, but at least when you're ill, you can go to bed and sleep. Whereas when you're hungover, you can't, because although you're tired and sick and exhausted, you've still got all those stimulants knocking around. So you can't actually physically, it's exactly what you were saying. It's almost like having a load of amphetamines and being completely unable to sleep, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the one thing at that point, you've done this brave thing, you've stepped up, you've stopped drinking, and you just want to get into bed and sleep and sort of have some peace and escape from it. And even that's against you to start with.
Yeah, it doesn't even work to start with, does it? No. Let's have a look at some of the other questions then. So obviously very topical, this one. We've had a few questions about Christmas. The first one, I think I know what you're going to say to this, but I'll read it out anyway. It's managing to give up alcohol just before Christmas. Should I do it or wait for the new year?
Yeah, just do it. You've got to dive into it. I did a video on YouTube around sort of New Year's resolutions and why they tend not to work. Because I'm not saying this would be a New Year's resolution, by the way, but they could. When you do things just as a New Year thing, it can tend to be very much based on willpower and not so much on a complete change of your mindset and your attitude towards it. If you feel ready and you want to take that step forward, then just do it. Imagine you'll have your first sober Christmas really, really quickly. That's a massive milestone. And actually notice how that feels, connecting with your family and being fully present and engaged. And in fact, I put a post on Instagram earlier, I think, and it said the best present is being present at Christmas. Yeah, that's what will happen. You'll be
Yeah.
fully present, and that's a gift.
Because the way I think of it is quitting drinking. One of the big parts of it is learning to live your life without alcohol. And we all of us have like big occasions where we think, oh my God, how am I going to get through Christmas, my next holiday, birthdays, nights out with mates, all the rest of it. In fact, these things are better when you're not drinking. You're present, you enjoy them more, you're not hungover, you don't have the arguments or the blackouts if you're drinking at that level. And actually, when you get one of these big events under your belt, it really boosts your confidence. So actually, it's a perfect time of year to quit, because you quit now and in a few weeks, you've got Christmas under your belt. And it's like, you know what? I did enjoy Christmas. It was great with not drinking, and it boosts your confidence. So in a way, stopping when you've got one of these big events right in front of you is actually a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree. And funny enough, I had my first sober holiday within about 2 weeks of quitting. I went away with my mum and my son, and I sort of used it as a sober boot camp. I was reading books, sat by the swimming pool, and walking on the beach. I felt very mindful, like I was noticing things. Of course, I was noticing people drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, maybe I was a bit judgy about that. But yeah, I've grown up or grown a bit since then. I only judge on the weekends now.
I think, you know, I do say this to people, this isn't for everyone's taste. And if you don't like this, just disregard it. But I think in a way, judging people and looking down at them for drinking can really boost your sobriety. Because I think traditionally, the way sobriety was sold to people is there's something wrong with you. It's your fault. It's not my problem. So the people who were stopped drinking are like very cowed and very ashamed of it and very apologetic. Whereas I think the whole sober movement's just totally changing that and turning it on its head now.
Yeah,
People are stopping like you because they want a better lifestyle. And
yeah, there's no shame in it.
Exactly.
If anything, you're a sober rebel. I know it's there. I'm pointing the wrong way. It's that side, sober rebel. That's my attitude. There's no shame. I wear it with pride. It's funny though, because life, I can't remember which book I read it in, but I think it was a book, but everything in life's a judgment. We judge all the time. We're judging things, making judgments, and we make judgments about people, whether we're afraid of them, whether we're drawn towards them, whatever. So I think it's okay to make judgments. I think being brutal to people and rude to people is different. But
yeah, I think, we need to keep these things internal and not necessarily speak.
Yeah, but just feel it. Just notice that, oh, well, perhaps I'm being a bit judgy there. And often I use those things, especially if sort of something brings up a strong emotion in me, to actually look within. Well, why do I feel that? Where's that coming from? Because it's generally something from my past.
Actually, so another question here, and I think this is probably digging in a much closer to the truths and maybe what people are struggling with. It's another one about Christmas. So I've listened to numerous podcasts, your Facebook Lives, read umpteen books, including both of yours, joined alcohol-free program, Not Cheap. I've done the 30-day alcohol experiment, and if I were to sit an exam in this stuff, I'd get a distinction. However, I still have a hankering feeling that I might want a glass or 6 of wine on Christmas Day. Currently alcohol-free 116 and wondering why this feeling won't budge after all the study I've been doing. For your information, I'm totally over drinking alone at night habit and replaced it with reading. Guess what? Laugh out loud. It's just the damn thought of Christmas Day. So I think that is a key point for a lot of people. It's trying to get rid of that image of having champagne on Christmas morning or a glass of red wine with lunch or mulled wine or whatever it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a really good question because, funny enough, we were talking about this in my group earlier, and there's a couple of things with this. I have a bit of a sense or a bit of a theory that with alcohol, I did a YouTube video about chasing the buzz, chasing the euphoria, and missing the euphoric buzz. And I think when we have our first drink or our first good experience with alcohol that we believe, I say good, I mean it in inverted commas, when we're younger, I think that puts a big stamp in our memory. And I truly believe that that's what we end up chasing forever and ever. We always want that back and we never actually get it back. And in a way, I think with the point around Christmas Day, there's probably memories from past Christmases where you had a wonderful day. Yes, champagne or wine happened to be there, or you might have had a drink in the morning as part of a tradition, but that wasn't the reason it was a good day. So make sure you're clear on why it was a good day. And we were talking earlier in my group about actually creating some new sober traditions, new things you can do. So chuck the old ones out and say that's the old version of me. Version 2.0 goes for a lovely walk with the family on Christmas Day, or I'll go, whatever you like to do, I'll go for a run. There was somebody who used to drink Baileys every morning on Christmas Day. They're going running. They're doing a 5K run because they love doing that now. And I suppose also thinking about what is it you really want in that moment? What is the feeling you got? And where else can you get it where it's not from taking a poisonous substance into your body?
Yeah, and I think a lot of this as well, it's fantasy, isn't it? We have this idea of, I mean, when we think about drinking at Christmas, we think about, that glass of champagne or that glass of red wine with lunch. We don't think about the fourth or fifth one when we've eaten and we're fast asleep on the sofa, or waking up in the middle of the night anxious, or getting up on Christmas morning kind of tired and anxious and exhausted because we've been drinking the night before. All that goes out the window and you just have this perfect image of you sat there really happy having a drink, whereas that's not often the reality of it anyway. And even if that is the reality, as you say, take away the champagne. What's changed? You can still be there enjoying yourself.
And also, exactly what you said around, it's a fantasy. Just think of the times when you purchased alcohol. I remember for me, I would get an adrenaline rush, a sense of excitement. I would get the euphoric buzz when I picked the bottle off the shelf. The liquid had not gone into my mouth and I was having an effect from it. That to me proves that it was the anticipation of it, the build up to it, which was actually, the anticipation was always greater than the actual event of drinking itself, I think. So just try and get some clarity, get curious about it, write it down. Is it the anticipation of having the drink on Christmas Day that feels exciting and that's what you're missing, the build up to it? Or is it the act of drinking itself? My bet would be it would be the anticipation. And if it is, do something else, get excited about something else.
Yeah, I think as well with it, a lot of it, particularly with Christmas, it's we have, as I say, we have this kind of idea about it. But so for me, I had a very happy childhood. So Christmas was always a really good and magical time. And when I was kind of coming out of that phase, I was getting into the drinking phase. So then I'd look forward to Christmas because it was just a day where you can just drink all day as much as you like. And for me, for years, that was the pleasure in Christmas. Yeah, you get food and spend time with the family, but really it was the novelty of just being able to drink the whole day. And now I've almost come into a third stage where it's not about the alcohol. So you do need to find the other pleasure in it. You're not at work for the day. You get some nice food. You're with your family. You can sit and watch, whatever you like doing, it's that. So you just need to appreciate that there is pleasure there. It's not going to be because you can just take a drug uninhibited for the day. You need to find the other pleasure that's there, which I think goes back to what you were saying about do what you enjoy, go for a run, do something like that.
Yeah, and I also think on the flip side of that is paying attention to the things that might be a threat to your sobriety. So, for example, if cooking is a bit of a trigger, can someone else do the cooking? Could you prepare the day before, or maybe some family members could cook things and bring those over to you, but spend some time planning in advance and actually think about, well, who are the people, what are the situations, what are the times of day, and actually, get into it, get curious about it so that you feel really prepared. You wouldn't not prepare your vegetables for Christmas Day, so make sure you prepare your sobriety for Christmas Day as well.
Yeah. The last of the Christmas related questions. This is a favourite of mine, actually. I did my first, doubtless of many, Christmas chauffeuring yesterday. is it possible to get used to drunk people being very, very boring and repetitive? I have fairly firm views on that, but what do you
Yeah,
reckon?
I don't know. I haven't yet. I don't know if I don't
No.
think you have either.
No, I kind of, I suppose Christmas is a bit different, but I kind of, when I go to work, not that I've been on work functions for nearly a year now with lockdown, but I tend to go and know that I'll be leaving after about 2 or 3 hours when the alcohol starts to kick in, because I find drunk people intensely irritating. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that I don't then sit there and think, oh, this is my problem, they're enjoying themselves and I can't. I think you're irritating, you're not
Yeah,
funny, you
no.
think you are, you're standing too close, I'm going home.
I I often, if I ever need to give myself a quick boost of gratitude and I haven't got my journal with me, I always ask myself a question. I always say, I'm glad I'm not a, and then I fill in the blank. So if you ask yourself that, I'm glad I'm not a whatever, maybe homeless or in prison or whatever. That's how I feel when I see drunk people. I'm glad I'm not a one of those. I'm glad I'm not like that.
So some questions now that aren't related to Christmas. Does anyone else dream they have been drinking? I'm alcohol free for 80 days and having reoccurring dreams of drinking and feel terrible guilt when I wake up. Was a weekend binge drinker and don't miss it at all.
Yeah, I had dreams that I'd been drinking, and so I do a lot of coaching in the alcohol experiment, which is one of Annie Grace's. I'm sure some of your members know about it. And so they're big groups. So we talk about this a lot, and I hear it from a lot of people. So first of all, absolutely, you're not alone with that. It's something that happens time and time again. My view is, if you can probably think of other things in your life where, for example, you might have been watching a movie or talking to people at work about a particular topic, and then you've had a dream about it because it was on your mind and it slipped into your subconscious. And when you're digesting information about alcohol day in, day out, listening to podcasts, reading books, that kind of thing, it's on your mind. You've done something really huge and it's still there. It's rattling around. There's lots of thoughts about it. And I just think that's why those dreams tend to crop up, just like if you've got something else that's been on your mind a lot. And they can be really vivid. There's possibly something around the mind and body rebalancing there as well, which I don't know the science about. But the good thing is, I mean, I woke up and I firmly believed I'd been drinking wine, and the joy of knowing that I hadn't ruined my sobriety, it was like a morning gift for me. But interestingly, so I was talking to somebody last week about dreams, and it was a really interesting conversation. And like, dreams are a bit like a gateway into the subconscious mind. And I think, there's a lot in that subconscious mind that can signpost us to things. So he keeps a notepad next to his book, and when you open the notepad, a little light comes on and he's got a pen, and if he has a dream and it wakes him, or when he wakes up, he just jots down a few pointers, and he keeps a dream journal, and he was reading some of it out, and it was amazing. And he's been like looking online and reading books about dreams. You can interpret them in so many ways though, but it's quite an interest. If you're journaling anyway, it might be interesting to start logging dreams down.
See what's going on. Yeah, I mean, I still now dream I'm drinking, and I don't worry too much about it. I dream I'm drinking, and usually I do exactly the same, as wake up and think, it's one of those dreams where it's almost like an anxiety dream, and you're really relieved when you wake up, because it's usually I'm not actually drinking at the time, but I appear in the dream and I've been drinking, and I'm thinking, what on earth am I doing? What did I do that for? And then I wake up and I'm really relieved, and I think it's probably a good sign. I think sometimes in your dreams, you kind of tentatively explore things, and to know that your reaction is relief that it didn't happen, I think is usually a good sign.
Yeah, and I suppose that, absolutely right. The thing to watch for is if you wake up and think, "Oh, I didn't have a drink. I wish I had," but I've never known anyone experience that, so I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, and be glad that you had a drink the night before. Yeah, I don't think that ever happens, does it? So the next question, do you see a link between ADD, ADHD and alcoholism?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with ADHD in my mid-40s after I quit drinking, and again, it's a badge I wear with pride. I, I've kind of changed my view around it a little bit with regards to labels, because ADHD is so broad, and I've discovered there's just so many elements to it.
Tell us a little bit more about what it actually is, because I think some people might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, so in essence, it's when you either struggle to pay attention to things. I was going to make a joke then and pretend that something had distracted me out the window, but or it can be impulsivity, it can be excessive talking, which I'm renowned for, hyperactivity, hyper focus, which is where you start writing a book and you can't stop, that type of thing. Okay. Overthinking things. And so ADHD, now this kind of goes against some scientific thoughts on it, but there are some renowned professors and doctors that speak about this, and I'm firmly in this camp. This is just a very quick sort of way of, because this will explain more. So when a child is born, their brain is forming millions and millions of connections. They're actually quite underdeveloped. Like if you compared a baby to a horse, like a horse can walk when it's born. Yeah. A baby's got a long way to go. So a horse is far more developed. And every day, millions and millions of these connections are forming in their mind. I know you had a great childhood, and it doesn't affect everybody, but mine wasn't so great. And if you've got a parent who projects stress onto the baby, like my father had just abandoned us, my mum had lost her house, there was a lot of stress coming from her onto me.
Yeah.
If you imagine all of those connections in the brain forming, they need sunlight, they need love, they need care, they need compassion and comfort. When there's stress being projected, it's almost like if those connections are like flowers growing in a garden, it's like a big cloud's come over. The connections don't form properly in the brain. So I don't think you're born with ADHD. I think it's when the connections don't fully happen because certain things go on and the baby's scared or doesn't feel fully comforted. And I'm convinced that's where it sort of stems from. For me, a lot of my drinking was to blot out these feelings that I didn't understand. I couldn't shut off my busy brain or my mouth. So I would just drink I didn't even realize what it was all about. So I absolutely do think having those kind of traits can be a sort of gateway to any kind of addictive behavior, whether that's eating, exercise, work. You know, I've been through most of the addictions, trying to numb my mind. Believe me.
How do you deal with it now then?
So I do have some medication for it, which I find really helpful, and there's some of it. If, like anyone in the group who's got ADHD and whoever asked the question, the reason I kind of wear it with pride is because it's also a superpower. You can use it to achieve some amazing things. You can, if you channel it in the right way, it's incredible. So I channel it. And the big thing I learned about it was that not doing the things that can kind of trigger you. So there's certain things I really struggle with, anything involving spreadsheets or hefty accounting style things. Like I haven't even got a banking app on my phone because it just blows my mind. And I spent quite a lot of time dissecting what I enjoy. So I focus on the creative things and I try and spend time doing the stuff that really lights me up. The danger being that you can end up getting immersed in it and spend, 12 hours a day doing something because you're hyper focusing. But there's so much medication and experts on this that, if you've got a sense that you might have some of those traits, there's free online tests you can do to explore it. But I get a lot of people reaching out to me about that. But there's definitely a link because it's all about hiding away from this stuff that's going on up here, and you just want to get out of your head. Literally.
I can imagine if you've got too much going on in your head, alcohol's an obvious solution to it because it just dampens everything down and calms stuff down. But I mean, how does it compare? Because I think this is something, I've not experienced any of these things, but how I read it is if you've got an underlying mental health issue, you are more likely to drink more because it's the most widely available sedative. And when you've got a mental health issue, something isn't right. And so you might not be able to put your finger on it, but things probably don't feel right. But you probably feel a lot better when you've had a drink. So I think it sucks people in.
Yeah.
But how does it compare now, drinking to deal with it, compared to what you're doing now to deal with it?
Yeah, well, because what was happening before was I would drink in the evenings, and sure, I might get 90 minutes of numbing out, but it was a big downhill slope after that, where my anxiety would be literally 8 or 9 out of 10 the next morning. My emotions were all over the place. Mood swings were just a daily occurrence pretty much. But now I'm calm, I'm connected, I've got coping mechanisms that are healthy. I meditate, I do different activities that light me up. Like I've got a Peloton bike, and because I can't run anymore, which was another addiction of mine, I go on that and enjoy it. So I've found healthy coping mechanisms that give me that same kind of outlet and use my energy and kind of light me up. They bring me joy, and I've spent quite a lot of time investigating what brings true joy to me, and I think that's so important.
It sounds like a lot of personality traits where they're double-edged swords. So you can be seen as a bad thing, but you're right, it can be a superpower, because if it means you're really focused, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
But I mean, there's it's not really, I suppose it's not an epidemic, but in some countries, I think in the US, it's actually quite prevalent that there's an ADHD drug called Adderall, and a lot of people who are at college, university take it because it allows them to hyperfocus for 12, 15 hours straight. You know, they get immersed in something and you can't pull yourself away from it.
Right. God.
That's another addiction.
Yeah. I've just seen what the time is. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Actually, this kind of comes on from this. This is alcohol. So, hi, William. I know you say alcohol causes anxiety and depression, but do you also think that anxiety and depression causes drinking? Is it just one big cycle? I think we've kind of touched on that. I mean, obviously, alcohol does cause anxiety because your brain starts to become hyperactive to work under the depressing effects of the alcohol. So when the alcohol wears off, you feel really anxious and possibly depressed. But I think, it obviously, we talked about it, but it hits the other way as well, doesn't it? Because if you've got something that isn't right, and people kind of look at alcohol as some kind of miracle drug, but the fact of the matter is, the only reason it's so prevalent is because it's easy to get hold of. It's
completely
the drug to get. I mean, we could walk out now and just pop to the local shop and buy alcohol. You can't do it with methamphetamines and opium and heroin.
Yeah, and I bet if alcohol was invented today, it wouldn't be legalized.
No, exactly. And it's another reason it's so prevalent is it's easy to make. You know, if you make not that I've ever made methamphetamine, but you need, like all the chemicals and a lab and all the rest of it. Alcohol, you just need some rotten fruit or vegetables and you're home and dry.
Yeah, I used to do exactly that. I used to make my own because it was getting so expensive. But I mean, the depression and anxiety thing is something that was, very, showed up in my life in a big way. And which came, it's like the chicken and the egg, which came first. But in this book, and I know you got some mixed views around it, but I speak from my experience in there, and lots of people I talk to have a similar experience where alcohol, it isn't always the cause, it's the effect. And for me, very much it was, the cause was a lot of stuff from my childhood. And there's a chapter in there called Why Alcohol Might Not Be the Problem. And it talks about different types of parents and things that might have led to anxiety, to depression. Because as you said, when there's a mental health problem, not always, but often there's something that's sat behind that. And it can be very subtle. If you've got a parent who's a narcissist or a parent who's addicted themselves, then it translates through, and that can lead to anxiety, depression. So I guess, if there is anxiety and depression, it's what's underneath it, what's behind it, where does it come from? And some people just have anxiety and depression. I get that, and there's medication and all the rest of it. But very often, from people I've spoken to, there's stuff it could be bullying at school. It could be
Mm.
all sorts of things that show up from the past that have really led to some kind of numbing out traits as adults,
Yeah.
coping mechanisms.
I sometimes think of it like, those Russian dolls where you get dolls within dolls within dolls. So most people, alcohol's the outer level, and you pluck it open, and then you may find something else in there, like a mental health issue, depression, whatever. You may open that up, and then you find something back in the childhood. And I think the problem is, you don't know, you have to strip it away layer by layer. The first thing has to be the alcohol, because some people do find without the alcohol and all the messing around with the brain chemistry and you get back to normal sleep, that actually was the problem. And yes, you have ups and downs, but actually you can deal with them. So you open that doll of problems and there's nothing in there. That was the only thing. But I think some other people then find the depression. But the trouble is, you can't drill down to the depression and find out, is it chemical? Is it something in my past? What is it? When you're constantly either numbing it with alcohol or exaggerating it with the withdrawal. So you're constantly swinging between the two. You have to cut that out to get underneath it, which is, I think, what you did, wasn't it? With your
that's it, exactly what I did, because obviously it wasn't intentional. I mean, I quit, and that allowed me to take this mask off, this false persona that I'd been for so long, and actually see who was this real version of Simon. What did he look like? And that was when I started unearthing the ADHD, and I started noticing that actually I struggled to feel my feelings. I wasn't connected with a lot of my emotions. Where was all that coming from? Of course, I'd never noticed any of this when I was drinking.
No.
And then I started doing work on that, which I kind of, if people do discover actually there's some stuff from my past, I see it as a gift, because if I hadn't quit, I'd still be stuck. But it enabled me to shine a light on this and then be able to start exploring it, working through it, and finding out why do I never get angry? Why can't I connect with this? Why do I never cry? I do now. I cried on a live Q&A the other day. It's wonderful.
It's very un-English of you. Dear me. So
I love nothing better than crying.
I'll tell you what, we're coming up to an hour now, actually, but there's one more question. I couldn't resist putting this one in. The saying, if you keep walking into a barber shop, eventually you're going to get a haircut, keeps popping into my head. I've been going to the occasional social event and have been fine with my sparkling water. Okay, so that's all good news. But then they go on to say, am I being naive thinking this can last if I continue to hang out with all drinkers? I've had friends how long I'm going to keep this up. It's been almost 3 months. I said I'm going for a year. They can't fathom that I could completely give it up. So what's your take on that?
It's a tricky one. I love that barber shop analogy. I think it's great. I always kind of rub my head when I see that one, because I never go near a barber shop. It's a tricky one. I suppose you've got to be really honest with yourself. And first of all, are you having a good time when you're out with these people? Are you actually enjoying it? Be like really, really honest with yourself. Because if you're not, why are you doing it? Just go and do some activities that bring you true joy. If you're just, there's a term called FOG, F-O-G. If you're doing it for FOG, which is fear, obligation, or guilt, if that's why you're showing up, then you're showing up for the wrong reasons. If it's bringing you true joy and you're enjoying drinking sparkling water while you're in a pub and your friends are drinking around you, then go for it if you feel safe. But my suspicion is that there's probably some guilt or obligation around it. And I think that a year or so ago, I started doing something called radical honesty, which is never lying, never bending the truth, never leaving out details. It's the best thing I've ever did. I feel so light. So I would just be radically honest with yourself. There's a book of the same name, which is kind of worth checking out. And ask yourself those questions. Am I really getting joy out of this? Because I suspect if you're going for reasons around fear, obligation, guilt, then potentially it is that sitting in a barber shop and you might eventually just feel fed up and be tempted to take a drink. And focus on make new friends, but they don't have to be sober friends. I made lots of new friends when I quit, but it was in an environment that wasn't about drinking. It was to do with fitness or boot camps and things like that, where yeah, they drank, but booze wasn't at the center of the activity. So do focus. Maybe you haven't spent time finding new things to do, new hobbies, new pastimes, possibly.
That saying about, the other thing I would say on that saying about go to a barber shop and eventually you're going to get a haircut. Bear in mind, people go to pubs and restaurants and out with friends not because of the alcohol. They go to meet friends and talk to people. So it's a slightly different analogy, I think, to a barbershop, because you don't go to a barbershop to meet friends and talk to people. You go for a haircut.
Yeah, true.
But pubs and restaurants, don't forget, the point of them is to go and spend some time with friends, not necessarily just to all go and take a drug that you all happen to be addicted to. I think we're probably going to have to wrap up, to be honest, because we're coming up to an hour mark. But Simon, thank you so much. So when's the book actually available then? Is it?
Yeah, it's on 24th of December.
And it's available for pre-order now, is it?
Yeah, you can pre-order it now. I can put a link in the group if you want. And I'm also doing a live 2-hour stop drinking workshop on the 2nd of January for anyone who pre-orders it. So there's a little, on my website, there's if you've pre-ordered the book, you fill in the form and you get your ticket to this workshop. So anyone who does pre-order it gets that, which is worth more than the book.
Yeah, so is that so that's a 2-hour...
It's a 2-hour live event, and
okay.
It's just for people who've pre-ordered the book. It's just a thing. I thought I'd just do it as sort of celebrate the launch and just to kind of give something back.
What day's that on? Is that on?
It's the 2nd of January. That's
okay. Good timing for it then as well.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, exactly. It's perfect.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I hope everyone's enjoyed this. And we'll see you all soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.